because I literally got an E in my first exam. Like my first mock, I got an E. So I went from an E to an A star in under a year. Hey guys, it's Nicole here. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my A star A-level tips and advice for psychology A-level. These are going to be the steps and little tricks that I did throughout my A-levels to actually end up getting an A star in the psychology A-level. Now, I was AQA, but I feel like these steps can be applied to OCR, EdXL, all the different types of exam boards because they're sort of transferable and they can be applicable to different topics and things like that. So if you want to know how to get an A star in your A-level psychology, keep watching. My first tip is to have a good rapport with one of the teaching staff who is teaching psychology at your school. Now, this is important because this teacher is essentially going to be guiding you through your course. As well as that, they are actually trained in how to mark, they're trained on how to actually teach the course, so they know, or you should hope, but they know this subject inside and out. So it's important that you can sort of go to them and ask them for any guidance or any things that you can do to help improve your grade. As well as that, a lot of teachers have to attend conferences and training for the specific exam board and how to teach as well as how to mark. So they know the marking criteria inside and out, so they should be able to guide you. If that is not the case, because I know in some instances they may not have the best teaching staff at your school. With my school, I was lucky because I had one bad teacher and I had one good teacher. So I'd go to the good teacher, and then luckily in my final year I had two good solid teachers who I could go to. However, it's good that you can speak to at least someone, so maybe a tutor if you are able to do so, but somebody who can guide you and is knowledgeable of the actual marking criteria and the guidance. There's also videos and things like that online that you can get access to. When I was really serious about my A-levels and I was like, right, I want to get some good grades, I went to one of my teachers and I was like, right, sir, what can I do? And he was basically like, Nicole, this is what you need to do. Practice this, let me know if it doesn't work and see how your grades improve. Because I literally got an E in my first exam. Like my first mock, I got an E. So I went from an E to an A star in under a year. So it was not a good time. I was literally like, sir, like I don't want to get an E. I didn't realise how difficult A-levels were going to be, the jump from GCSE to A-level, because with GCSEs it was just very much like you can kind of not do a lot of work and get a good grade. So I literally underestimated how much work it was going to take to get decent grades. And he was like, right, Nicole, you need to do X, Y, Z, and then come back to me, let me know if it doesn't work, and then we can just go from there. So it was good that I knew that I could ask my teacher for help. My next step is to actually use more than one sort of like resource, use multiple sources, because I was actually advised by my teacher to not just use the sort of standard book that they give you with all the facts and things like that in. I was advised to use this book as well, and my teacher was like, Nicole, if you want to get the higher band of marks, you need to show breadth as well as depth of knowledge, and you need to have a solid understanding, and you need to know the sources and the knowledge well enough to be able to explain it, to get those AO1, AO2 and AO3 marks. And I found that to be the case with this book. Especially this was not advised to be for us to buy, but my teacher was like, get this one as well as the standard one that you have, and that will basically explain things better. And it did, and it explained it in such detail, and it had such good evaluation marks that it helped me. Now, my next step is probably up there with, I think, one of the most important steps I took. Now, this was something that I thought of myself, and this was creating a checklist. And I actually created the checklist from the mark scheme from the AQA website. So I actually went onto the website and I got up all the marking criteria and the mark schemes for each of the topics that I was doing for my exams, and I actually made a checklist. So each point for each topic I turned into a bullet point and put a little box at the end, and that was my checklist. And whenever I'd completed something and I knew it inside and out, I ticked it off, and that way I couldn't have missed anything, because AQA are only, well, the exam board and your exams are only allowed to test you on the things that are on the marking criteria. So I thought in doing that, I can't miss, it's impossible to miss out any knowledge or anything. My next step is to create a schedule and sort of a plan. Now, this actually organizes your time and gives you a nice sort of like clear layer and how to make sure that you are hitting those targets and you are ticking off those criteria points that you need to reach. Now, I advise doing this sort of early on in the year, so that way you can space your time and you can give each of the topics in your papers all the attention and sort of the time to go over whatever you need to and to do the learning and to do the practicing. My next step is to create some on-the-go study resources. Now, this is important because the more you go over something, the more it's in your head and you feel more confident and then you learn it easier. This is sort of little cue cards or things that you can take with you in the car, on the bus on your way to school, or just chilling. And I found that having little cue cards really helped me if I was just kind of like, I don't know, waiting for an appointment and I was just outside the room and I just wanted to like check my cue cards, or if I was in the car on a long journey. And it's something different. Instead of doing exam practice, it's nice to have like cue cards, and especially if you're more visual and you kind of like things to be laid out. I found these cue cards were quite helpful, and I did different types of cue cards. So I did cue cards where I wrote the fact on the back and then I had the name, particularly useful in topics such as memory and remembering parts of the brain and their function. I'd put what it was and then I'd put the fact on the back, and then I'd do things like I'd write down all the, I'd sort of like play like a matching game, or I'd have cue cards that were literally just for facts and just remembering facts. And it was important to condense, so I made sure that my knowledge and the facts were condensed. And in the process of condensing, that is when I remembered things, because the less you have written out, the more you have to think and consciously remember and learn. And that is how I got to learn a lot of the content for all my 3 papers. Following on from the resources, I'd recommend making posters. Now, I made posters and I literally stuck them all over the wall with blue tack. My mum was not very happy when I had to take them off, and then there was like the little like blue tack dots left behind, but still it helped me. And what I'd do is I'd do sort of like small posters and big posters, and I'd have in the middle, I'd have the topic, for example, social influence, and then I'd have the subtopics all around, and I'd have the names and the dates. And this kind of just helped me remember the names and the dates, because they are crucial, and it's those little details is what gets you the A's and the A stars, and making sure that you know the evaluative marks, you know the pros, you know the cons, and you know the detail of the studies, because the studies make up the bulk of the answers, and particularly those longer marks with the 12 and 16 markers. You need to remember those dates, you need to remember those studies. So I'd have my poster and I could just kind of like have a little look and briefly look at which topics and names and dates and studies I needed to remember. I will insert a clip of all the resources and things that I made that I'm talking about. My next step is to practice. Practice. And this follows on from the first point about having a good rapport with some sort of teacher, a tutor, or even someone in your class who knows the content quite well. And what I mean by this is practicing. So I actually found my 16 markers that I gave to my teacher, and the 16 markers for when I did my exam, 16 markers was the most amount of marks that you could be asked. And these were the harder questions, because you have to have different points, you have to be descriptive, you have to be analytical, you have to be evaluative to get those top marks when getting the 16 marker questions. I remember when I first did my 16 markers, I'd get probably like, I don't know, like 9 out of 16, and then towards the end it was 15 out of 16 or 16 out of 16, and I literally kept giving all the 16 markers in the book, and in the book at the bottom they have the 16 markers. I think I did most of them, and I was giving it in to my teacher, and I was like, right, how was this, and the harsher they are, the better it is, and that way you can be as critical to yourself, so when it actually comes to getting into the exam, you know what you're talking about. Following on from practicing, it's also important that you actually practice with previous exams, and you sit there and you time yourself and you try and get your time down so you know how much time to spend on each set of questions, and you kind of roughly work out how long it will take. So like the multiple choice, you know you won't take long, whereas you need to give yourself enough time so you're able to answer those 16 markers, and you only know that through practicing. So I think it's super important that you do practice and you give yourself enough time to practice, and then you kind of get in a drill of knowing how much time to spend on this and just spreading your time in a sensible manner so you can actually complete the paper to the best of your ability. Just to finish, I will say 2 things that really helped me. It is condensing information down. So when I first started out and I was first revising for that first mock that I got an E, I was just regurgitating the notes and I was just rewriting the notes in different coloured pens, and I thought if I highlighted a few words and did a bit of colour and underlined stuff, that would go in my head, but that was not the case. I had to condense and I had to make sure that I actually knew what I was talking about. So it even meant kind of like sitting and reading aloud and making sure I knew it in my head, and then writing down sort of little keywords or little notes about, for example, one study. And it got to a point where I was able to condense a whole study just by the year and the name. So when it came to, for example, a 16 marker about Milgram study, I could literally write everything about it just from practicing and the repetition. And then the repetition is the second thing. I repeated everything in different formats, different ways of learning. The more you repeat it, the more it is in your head. At the end of the day, your brain is a muscle, it needs to be worked out, and I kept going over things, and that is how it ended up staying in my head. That is all for my tips. I hope you guys found this helpful. I wish you all the best with your studying. If you have any exams, coursework or anything, thank you for watching and getting to the end of the video. If you liked, please give this a massive thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and comment any suggestions, and I will see you guys in the next video.